We forgot to record the last time, Vivian, when you weren't here. We're halfway through. Oh, remember to record. Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Vivian.
Vivian was gone and now she's back.
Figured I'd make up for my tardiness last time by coming early.
Hey, Sam, you saw my note on the slide deck?
Yes, ma'am.
Okie dokie. Probably nobody's gonna show up.
Well, we're 2 minutes early.
We are. Oh my gosh. Is closed session at 5, Sam?
$5:30.
Oh, I thought I saw 5 on my calendar.
Pauline, I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead.
It does say 5, but my last time I looked at the agenda and changed it was 5:30.
Well, I'm in 2 places at once, so.
So Pauline, if there's no public comment, I'm just gonna take roll, as I see people on the screen, okay?
Okay, sounds good. We're hoping there won't be any public comment.
Yeah, so you can use that time to just get through this.
Breeze through it.
Yeah, the posted agenda says 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it does. So, oh, Beatrice. Oh, wow, it's a reunion.
But John and I can handle the first 2 topics without you, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't really have any items for closed session. I mean,
No.
What's on for closed session?
A ton.
I thought that was what was true.
hi, Natasha. Hi,
I know.
Beatrice. Hi,
That's
Frank.
true. We were just talking about closed session starts at 5, Pauline, so depending on
Yeah,
where
some of you might have to peel off. We'll see where we are.
cool. Hold on.
Natasha, Beatrice.
Hey,
Like old
John.
times. Dan. Okay, so let's give everybody 1 or 2 more minutes to come in. We have a pretty brief agenda, wrapping it all up. Hi, Yazid.
Hi, Pauline. Hi, everybody.
One more minute, then we're gonna get started. Can't do 2 things at once,
Hi, Miss Vivian. Hi, Miss Pauline. I need to step away for about 5 minutes, but then I'm going to come back. So if you take roll and I'm not here, I am here, but I have to run to the main office. Okay?
All right,
Mildred.
okay, hey, Mildred.
Well, thank you so much.
So Olivia Lim, Olivia.
Olivia's from the PTA.
Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm. Now we have.
Well, she should confirm, that's why she said.
Sorry, I don't know why it puts up my name as somebody else when I start Zoom in this meeting, but it always does, and then I just change it.
So is it
Oh.
Olivia or Rita?
It's Rita.
Yeah.
Rita
Okay.
Smith.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any public comment. I've already taken the roll. Pauline, you can proceed.
Oh, wow, we're moving right along. Let me share my screen, hold on. I have so many presentations, I have to make sure I'm sharing the right one. Da, 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 da. So, nobody for public comment, wow. So we've just put the link to the slide deck in the chat, and Vivian, if you can put another one in there, that would be helpful as well. So today we're actually doing 3 presentations. Welcome to our last SBAC meeting. Everybody should be excited and clapping at that point. So again, we're presenting this in accordance in support with our board support. And we do have some board members actually in attendance, even though they're not voting or actively participating in our process. You guys should know all of this information by now. We're no voting today, so we have nothing about voting. And again, an advisory committee, you're doing exactly that. Welcome all your input and all the information you've shared with us over this pretty extensive period. We are hoping to start earlier next year, and when Anika joins us, she will be taking over the meeting. Again, we're grounded in our 4 E's and our mission, enabling and inspiring our diverse student body to achieve academic excellence and make positive contributions to our world. No public comments. We've already done roll call. I'm going to share with you what I'm actually sharing later at the board meeting, the preliminary budget. We have a few updates on personnel and programs, and then we'll have closing moves and next steps. So let's look, Emily's on the call, and we'll both be presenting this evening to the board. So our preliminary budget, we're looking at our 2024-25 budget, and we're incorporating all the information that we have received from SBAC. Some have been voted on, some have not been voted on by the board. But just sharing with you, this is pretty much the same slide deck that the board is getting this evening. It is an unrestricted general fund focus. So of course, you know, we have several other funds, our BSEP funds, our Fund 21, and we have restricted and unrestricted programs. So our focus is the unrestricted general fund, and we are looking at the entire year. And it is based on the governor's May revise. So when we did the budget before for 24-25, it was based on the governor's enacted budget. So we looked at the 3-year projections. So now you're getting a brand new look at 24-25. That's the start of the 3-year period. And then we'll be looking at the subsequent 2 years. We do have a positive certification, and that's largely due to the budget cuts that you guys, or budget balancing solutions that were proposed and input in the budget. So we do have a positive fund balance for the current year and the 2 subsequent years. But important to note, this does not include negotiated increases, salary increases. So in 22, 23, and 23, 24, we had a 6% increase. These projections have no projected increases for salaries, and we're actually in negotiations with some of our union groups to determine to determine you know, where we land in terms of compensation and benefits. So the budget does include $6.9 million in board approved budget balancing solutions. Additional budget balancing positions, it says positions, but it should be solutions, will be included after board approval. This is actually incorrect. We have included them, and if the board votes no, we will be removing them. So I'll be updating this slide. And we still have a structural deficit, even though it's not as bad as it was. It's a very slight deficit. But remember, we have no budget balancing, no salary increases as yet. So what this kind of indicates at this point, any additional expenses will need additional budget balancing solutions in the out year. So we have a positive certification, we're barely positive, very tight budget, very lean times ahead. So it's an opportunity for us to look at our operations and identify any savings or any efficiencies in our budget. It's always this is always, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because then we can fine tune and streamline our operations. Sure. Settings are not for anyone to view. Oh, they can't view the link that you sent? All right. Emily, I think Emily, can you change the settings, or do I have to do that?
I think you have to do it. I don't have access to it either, actually. I think it's
All
a
right.
copy of
All right, hold
the
on.
internal one.
Sorry, I have to stop presenting then. Sorry. So I shared it with you, right, Vivian, as a oh, all right, let me do it. Sorry, guys. All right, I've updated this now. So let me go back to sharing. Easier said than done.
It's working now.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. So we left off about budget balance, and let me put this in slideshow mode. So this budget cycle, the next slide is our budget cycle. It kind of tells you that we're working in 2 fiscal years. So in 24-25, the governor proposed this budget. Can you guys hear me? There's a weird feedback. So he proposed this budget in January 24. We're doing the board receives updates on budget reductions. We work on our budget development process. And at the same time, in March, we did our 23-24 second interim budget. So the multi-year at that point would have in the 24-25 as a second year. So now we're back in fiscal year 24-25, and the governor releases his budget in May, which is what we're actually building into our budget assumptions. And we're taking a preliminary budget to the board tonight, which is in May, and then we're taking the LCAP and the budget to the board tonight, and then we're taking the budget for approval in June at the June 12th meeting. Any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward. So then we look at the variance report. So this time we're going to look at our estimated actuals, which is our budget for 23-24, and compare it to what we're projecting for 24-25. This is not the information that I was sharing with folks in terms of what we're looking like in 24-25. We had an estimate for that year at second interim, and then we were trying to project what it's going to be for 24-25. 25 based on the preliminary budget. This is looking at prior year to current year. Emily, did you want to do these slides as a rehearsal for tonight?
Sure, I can jump in.
Okay.
All right, so like Pauline said, that this is comparing our estimated actuals for the current year, 23-24, against what we're proposing as the preliminary budget for 24-25. And so we're just going to call out a couple of the areas where we're seeing variances. The first main area is that we're seeing a decrease in LCFF funding of just over $900,000. And that's primarily due to a decrease in the funded average daily attendance. So actual average daily attendance, it is increasing as a district, but we've been benefiting the last couple of years from having this rolling average that's been factoring in our pre-COVID enrollment. And so because that we're now excitedly more than 3 years out of the depths of the pandemic, we're unfortunately no longer benefiting from that higher ADA. So we're experiencing that decline in funding. We're also seeing some slight decreases around our other state revenues due to transportation and lottery projections, and then a slight increase in our local revenues, primarily due to an increase in interest rate. Go to the next slide. So going from revenue into expenditures, and again, this is all talking about the unrestricted general funds of Fund 01 and our unrestricted resources. This isn't talking about our parcel taxes or our restricted funding. This is just unrestricted Fund 01. And so we're seeing, if you look at the lines labeled B, we're seeing some decreases compared to the previous year. So on salaries, that's primarily due to closing vacancies and some of the budget balancing solutions. We're seeing a decrease in services that's also due in part to the board-approved budget balancing solutions, and also to the removal of some of the one-time expenditures that were in the 23-24 budget that didn't carry into the 24-25 budget. And then the decrease in capital outlay is based on revised projections. The lines marked with the letter C are where we're seeing increases from what we're estimating our spend as in 23-24 compared to what our projected budget is for our proposed budget is for 24-25. And so we're seeing that in supplies and then also in benefits. And those are primarily due to the removal of prior year one-time savings. So you remember that as part of doing our interim reports, we look at, how is our spending tracking against what we budgeted, and we might recoup savings at certain points throughout the year. So these estimated actuals include some of those one-time savings, whereas the proposed adopted budget doesn't. And so it looks like we're seeing that increase. We're also seeing the benefits increase due to an increase in the benefits rates themselves.
I think Vicky had her hand up. Do we want to just wait until after the variance report and then take questions on that, Emily?
I think that might make sense, yeah.
Okay, so Vicky, if you have a question, if you can just hold it until after we're finished with the variance report, that would be helpful. So next slide.
Yes, please. We're also seeing interfund this is our sort of other financing sources and uses. So we have our transfers between funds. So this is showing Fund 01 and where money is moving between those funds. We always do our transfer to the self-insurance fund of $250,000. The big line to call out is $2.1 million from Fund 20, and that's related to that two budget balancing items that the board approved around the one-time solutions with shifting funds from the retiree benefits account. Next slide, please. And then we have our contributions. Not much variance compared to prior years on our contributions in or our contributions out. Net, it's less than $100,000 change. Next slide. And then you'll see that with the beginning, this is sort of where we stand at the end is our net change in fund balance. Our overall fund balance is decreasing from 23-24 into what we're projecting for the beginning balance for 24-25. And we're seeing, because of reducing the spending in the 24-25 proposed budget, that we're still ending with a similarly sized fund balance as the ending fund balance. We have pieces of our ending fund balances that we assign. One item to call out is a decrease in our LCAP reserves. That's our $1 million designated fund balance item, and the board, SBAC, and then the board, I believe, voted to dip into that reserve, and that's primarily for maintaining the funding of certain positions. But you'll see that despite all of that, we're still maintaining our mandated reserve for economic uncertainties. But that when all is said and done, we basically just about balance out with an undesignated ending fund balance of 2.3 million.
Vicky had a question, and you guys, I must remind you, when we were coming up with our target and when we were looking at changes, we were looking at changes from 24-25 at second interim to 24-25. It says adopted, but it's actually like our preliminary budget. So, so you mightn't see some of the numbers that you're expecting because it's not it's comparing prior year to current to 24-25 and not what we had projected earlier and then after the cuts. So I hope that may clear up some questions. But Vicky, did you still have a question?
I don't, thank you.
Oh, okay. So did you want to do ADA? Emily, you want me to do?
I can do ADA.
Okay.
So our ADA stands for average daily attendance. And so that's based around not just the number of students we have, but what percentage of them are attending school. And so it's about our enrollment times our attendance rate. Our projected enrollment is based on the projections from the admissions office. And like I mentioned earlier, there's an approach that the state adopted since COVID of doing a rolling average to sort of smooth out the drop that a lot of districts felt when they lost enrollment during COVID. And as of 24-25, we're no longer benefiting from that averaging method. So our funded ADA that we're projecting for 24-25 is now the projected enrollment times the projected ADA percentage. And so we're seeing that ADA percentage projected to stay about the same at around 94.8%. And then we're seeing our funded ADA drop even while our projected ADA is growing because of no longer benefiting from that rolling average. You can see that the funded ADA in 23-24 was 8,900, but projected was actually only 8,600. So even though our actually projected ADA has gone up to 8,700, we're still feeling the impact, that sort of delayed impact of the that COVID decline in enrollment.
Any questions? Wow, we're gonna get out of here early. Okay, so I can take us through the multi-year projections. And again, it does not include estimates for salary increases, and we're basing it on the governor's May revise. So first thing to note, we revised our COLA assumptions. In 25-26, it went up a little bit from what was projected before. 26-27, you actually never saw that number because the last year you saw in our multi-year projections was 25-26. This talks about the funded COLA, the ADA, which is now the estimated ADA or the P2 estimated ADA, as Emily described on the previous slide. We saw an increase in our unduplicated pupil count. So last year when we were looking at our projections, we used the October numbers. This year we're using like the most current projections for unduplicated pupil count. So we're benefiting slightly from that. And then our unduplicated pupil percentage, it's a rolling percentage. So if you would expect these numbers to be the same, but in the calculator, we benefit a little bit each year from using the rolling percentage for UPP. So these are the numbers that came from our calculator. So also from our calculator, we have our book-based funding and our supplemental funding. So this evening, Jill and her team will be taking the LCAP, which is our supplemental line. They'll be taking that to the board for the first reading along with our budget this evening. So their numbers actually increased somewhat from what we were telling them for 24-25, and that's largely due to the increase in the unduplicated pupil count. Emily explained the other state funding and the local funding, and we kept that flat. Any changes will be input at the first interim. So let me move this thing out of the way. Put it at the top. So you can see that our overall revenue change year over year is basically as a result of the change in the LCFF funding. And then when we look at our expenses, these expenses already assume the $6.9 million, and it also has in other assumptions that we had talked about. We're taking that to the board for approval this evening. And if they do not vote on the ones that were proposed, we will be making an adjustment in the final budget when we take it back in June. Sources and uses, we're benefiting from that transfer in from Fund 20, but that's a one-time transfer as we discussed. So you can see that in the out years, we're not benefiting from that transfer in. So our transfer out numbers go up by that amount. And this is what I was talking about in terms of deficit spending. We are still deficit spending to the tune of $100,000, and that number is being helped by the reductions that we've actually, the budget balancing solutions we've actually input in the budget, still significantly negative 0.6, and then it goes back to 0.1 in 26-27. So the beginning balance number is actually significantly lower than we were sharing earlier, and that's because of the additional expenses that we've put in the budget since the second interim, including an $800,000 contribution to SPED because of the SPG contract. So we're projecting a $3.6 million ending fund balance, $3 million for 25-26, and 2.9. After designating for LCAP and Fund 1's share of the 3%, our focus should be on the undesignated ending fund balance of 2.3 million in 24-25, 1.3 million in 25-26, and another 1.5 million in 26-27. So we are balanced. We will get a positive certification, but it's a very lean budget, very tight. We are still looking at a few other things in terms of our certificated salaries and some other items. This is the first year that we've benefited from 2 years of being in escape. So the first year was last year. This is the second year. So there's still a lot of looking at what was put in last year and truing that up. But for now, this is what we think our multi-year projections look like. So again, it does not include negotiated salary increases, but we're positive for all 3 years. We're benefiting from our ongoing and one-time budget balancing. So actually, ongoing budget balancing solutions in the out year. Very tight budget. We are deficit spending. No negotiated salary increases. I'll keep saying that. Next steps. The board is going to approve any additional budget balancing solutions this evening. It's based on the governor's May revise, and the state budget is due June 15th. If we need to, and if the governor's budget has significant changes, when the governor does his final budget, we would do what's called a 45-day revision to our budget, and then board will be approving our budget at the June 12th board meeting. I see Nicole's hand and I see Vicky's hand. So Nicole.
Thanks, Pauline. So two other things we had been discussing in previous meetings, just want to make sure I understood, is that, given the caveats that you said, like this doesn't include any negotiated salary adjustments or anything else. One was we were looking at an additional like $2 million plus of cuts next year. Is that no longer in this model with these assumptions? Is that no longer required? And then the second is
Which 200,000 you're talking about?
in previous meetings, we had talked about we needed to make an additional cuts next year. Like another 2 million or so.
Oh, yeah, that's not in this scenario. So we'll be convening to talk about 25, 26. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because this in this forward-looking model, it's saying we still have a positive net fund balance.
We still have a positive net fund balance because the COLA went up slightly. We were talking about an additional 2 million to balance the budget.
Yeah.
But we're benefiting from increased ADA. We're benefiting from the increased COLA. So right now we're balanced, but we don't have any ongoing costs for negotiations as yet. So any additional expenses at this point will require equal or more in budget balancing solutions.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the second was, we had also, when we looked at our cuts, more of them were from one-time money as opposed to ongoing money.
Right.
And that was driving the concept that we definitely would have to make future cuts also. In this scenario, with this revised COLA and the other caveats, is that no longer a concern either?
No, well, it was, because remember I showed you in the contribution, the major one time that we had was a contribution from Fund 20. And you saw that in the out years, it fell off. So it was 8 points. I can take us back to that slide. It was our other financing solutions with 8 million this year. Next year, it's a transfer out of 10 million. So we're no longer benefiting from that one-time transfer from Fund 20.
I gotta figure that one out. I
can show you on the upcoming slides because I put it all together. This is just the May revise. So, so right now we don't have any of those additional. The multi-year takes into account 1 year, 1 year expenses and 1 year revenues from the current year, and it does not flow forward. That's standard multi-year projections. So the one-time expenses, which are minor, and the one-time revenues are removed from the multi-year projections for the out years.
Oh, interesting.
It's already built in, just a factor of doing a multi-year projection.
I'm trying to think of that to rooms out. Okay, thank you so much, Pauline.
Does that make sense, Nicole?
I think so. But I gotta get my brain around it. So let me try.
We can revisit it. It will make more sense when we look at it, possibly when we look at the overall picture of what we've done. Yes, Vicky?
Yeah, I'm wondering, at the last meeting when we talked about the May revise, it told us how the governor, in order to balance his budget, is doing a lot of one-time cuts instead of ongoing cuts, and that this deficit is greater than they expected. And so I'm wondering if it would not be more prudent for us not to be increasing our COLA over the next 2 years in the projection, being that it was so drastically low and we're increasing it by 2% over the next 2 years. Would it make sense to look at what the budget might look like if the COLA was not increased?
So we build our budget based on assumptions in what's called the school services dartboard. So what we don't do is kind of try to project what's going to be manifested or what's not. So we base it based on the information that we have. It's our responsibility if we want to set aside an amount to account for changes in the COLA or do some sort of budget balancing solutions to account for the fact that the COLA might not materialize. But what we do, we take the assumptions that were given in the dartboard, we build our budget based on that assumption, and that's based on advice from the county, and that's a standard accounting practice for school districts. And then whatever we're needing to do to set aside funds, we would do that either as a reserve, or we would do it as a placeholder in the expenditure budget.
So basically, there's somebody else who comes up with those projected COLA amounts that everybody uses? Is
Yes,
that
yeah, it's
okay?
standardized. Yeah, it's
Okay,
not
thank
something that.
you. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? So this slide just talks about the near and long-term challenges, and the state revenue is still very iffy. The governor and the LAO, Legislative Analyst Office, they're still have a widely separate projection of what the true deficit spending should be. And as Emily mentioned, we're now no longer benefiting from state mitigating measures for our ADA due to the COVID pandemic. And then we do have expiring one-time funds, both us and the state, but ours has already been accounted for in the restricted state revenue. And again, this is our challenge, which is why we really value our partnership with SBAC. We need to develop comprehensive plans to maintain our fiscal solvency and preserve the integrity of our educational programs. So that's our challenge that we're constantly faced with. And the partnership with SBAC is invaluable in helping us to reach this goal. So just a plug for SBAC, and thanks to everybody for all their input. Is our superintendent here? Oh, Jill. Jill is here. I was ready to hand it over. So let's look at the one-time thing. Nicole, hopefully this will help. I don't know if it will help or not. But we talked about our target. We talked about the 6.9. We know about those, right? We talked about the 6.9. And then we had these other proposals. This is what the board is getting tonight. You have already voted on these. The board is getting this as a package deal tonight to actually vote on this. So the garden and cooking, that was voted on as a yes by SBAC. Staffing school sites did not, was a no. And we removed the freezing the bus driver positions. So again, with those are earlier proposals, so that we are 0.2 ahead based on staff recommendation, not necessarily SBAC's. But the next slide talks about the other, putting the whole thing together now, all the things we've talked about and all the things that we've voted on. So there's a target again, there's a 6.9. What we've proposed, the garden and cooking, the staff in the school sites was on the previous slide. Then what we talked about last time, or what was, give me a second, Steve, let me finish this slide. We restructured the long-term subs, that gave us 0.4, and then freezing the manager of equity, achievement and belonging, that gave us 0.2. So the board will be voting on 0.8 million on ongoing and 0.2 million in one time for $1 million in terms of actually, yeah, they'll be voting on all of these down here. So that's like $1 million that they'll be voting on.
Just one point of clarification. So first of all, good evening, everyone. Pauline, you know I like to watch you suffer.
Thanks,
There's a
Ella.
question in the chat from Lindsay. I can't see it, but it was something about, it was a question about why isn't SBAC voting if the board is going to vote. And so I just want, and I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, Lindsay, so please correct me or ask it again. But I do want to clarify to SBAC that the 6.9 that you all voted on, the board is already voted on. And so the remaining amount for the board to vote on is this 0.8 or 0.2, as Pauline is saying. The high school stuff, thank you for, that's such a great way to say it. The high school stuff that is in the deck, Lindsay, we are not going to vote on it because we are looking for the high school to think of some other ways to address that need, just based on the feedback we got from SBAC, even just last meeting. And so we won't be taking those to the board tonight to vote on. If there is different feedback or desire for SBAC to move those things forward, we can definitely engage in that conversation, but our thinking was not to, we were just gonna stop where we are. We've moved towards a little bit beyond the target. We were gonna take the board, the items that we had already voted on and agreed on. Take it away, Pauline.
Hey, Steve had a question.
Yeah, so I think I'm kind of going back to Nicole's question. I remember what she's talking about. At one point, early in the process, we said we had 6.9 million to cut out of current year, and then another like 2.6 for next year, for a total of like 9.5.
Correct.
We were cutting. So I think what Nicole was trying to ask is, where's that 2.5? Are we going to address that next year then?
We're going to address it next year, but what it's showing now, based on our assumptions, remember the $6.9 million we have some are ongoing reductions. It was actually what we had to cut was a target, the 7.1. So we had 6.9, then we added to address the deficit spending. So that's why we came to a 7.1 target. And we had an additional amount in 24, no, and I'm saying it wrong, in 25, 26, the last year, to balance what was then the third year. But due to the cuts that we had, ongoing cuts, and the change in assumptions, sorry, we're balanced without having to make that additional cut at this time. But we do, we will have, if we have any ongoing expenses put in the budget, we would have to be making cuts to meet those expenses. So that's where we'll be starting the process next year. I see a lot of things in the chat. I don't know if I need to respond to any of those.
I don't know what's wrong with my chat. I can't see the stuff in the chat. I saw Nicole just put, do we have a link to this presentation? We can put the link in the chat, and it'll also be on our website, Nicole, but I can put it in there right now. But if there's other questions that you see in the chat, Pauline, I don't see them. Oh, Vivian just put the presentation in. I don't see any other questions, so let me know if we're missing some, Pauline.
I see 14, but I don't know what it's. So this is what I think Lindsay was talking about. So we're not bringing this back for voting because we're asking the site to actually balance this to balance their budgets and to find their budgets to pay for these amounts, just based on the feedback that we got. And again, we're grounded in our core values of resource allocation. We have checks and stars. So
yes, we have checks and stars just because we wanted to review and remind you all of how over our several weeks together as we move towards that 7.1, we both engaged in our core values of resource allocation. But when we came to make such a significant reduction, we did come to you with these budget reduction strategies, and just wanted to reiterate how we were able to move through each of those strategies and actually get close to that 7.1 with the ones in the red checks. So just by transferring expenses and evaluating unexpended funds and removing vacant positions, et cetera, we were able to make a significant dent towards our target. So we wanted to celebrate and appreciate that. And we know there continue to be questions about programs and positions, as well as just how do we continue to look for inefficiencies and figure out where we could have cost savings where we are duplicating efforts. And so with that slide, we wanted to move into some updates. Again, this is not anything that we're asking you all to vote on, but these were all topics of interest to SBAC and things we've been coming back to you with. And we wanted just to come back one last time and give you more updates and some information around next steps that we're doing both with positions as well as programs. And so for that first update, we have Sam Tobias Espinosa, who's going to give one more reminder. It's nothing new. We shared this with you last week. We wanted to share with you again in terms of positions that were specifically impacted because of budget reductions or because of the May 15th and March 15th notification requirements.
All right, thank you. So this is not the most updated version because we've updated while you were talking. But the original March list, which we brought to you last time, included notifying or impacting 83 classified staff members. On the updated list, which we brought to you May 15th, which has not changed since then, even though we would like to continue reducing it and are working towards that. There are only 26 employees who are impacted. So we went from 83 to 26. And those of you who have got the slides open yourself will see that, but the one that's being presented has not been refreshed to bring up that piece. So that's our update. And again, we are still working on solutions and trying to make sure that all of the 26 who are impacted are able to find other positions within the district if at all possible.
Vicky, I know you have a question, but just wanted to say that the reason why we wanted to bring that back again is because we made some commitments, if you will. We talked about those budget reduction strategies and we talked about how they are not in any order, but we were really trying to do our best to stay as far away from positions and programs as possible as we engaged in this $7.1 million budget balancing exercise. And, you know, every single person matters. You heard Sam just say that even for the folks that did get the notices, the 26 folks who are still impacted, we are working hard to find them positions within our district, should that be their choice. We want just to come back and bring that to you to say that we did what we said we're going to do. 26 is still a big number, but it's a significantly lower number than 81. And we continue to do the work to keep those folks in our schools and serving our babies. Vicky, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, when we spoke
Vicky?
on the
Mhm.
on the 15th, and we voted that we recommended the freezing of the equity position, it was mentioned that the 500K from LCSFF was going towards the OFI specialist, but I see that they're still on this list. Has that not been officially voted on yet?
Yes, that's correct. It's going to be part of this LCAP and budget package. So we're going to be making the recommendation explicit in tonight's presentation. Oops, sorry, should have said, hi, everybody, happy Wednesday. And then the board will vote for approval of the budget at the June 12th board meeting. So there's a bit of an order of operations there.
I see. So then those positions wouldn't be able to be rescinded until after the June 12th when it's officially voted on.
I'm going to double check that with Sam, but I believe that what we would do at the June 12th board meeting is agendize the rescinding of layoff notices on that same agenda, but it would have to come after the vote on the budget.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we once the board votes for the money and agrees to that, then we would be able to rescind those. So we are hoping that we would be able to rescind by the 13th. But yes, it would be after the board votes. That would take it from 21.
Another area of that we wanted to give you was around the investigative and legal support. Remember that we came to you all and just talked about not only the amount of money we spend with our legal partners and firms and consultation and actual litigation, separate from settlements themselves, but also the amount that we have spent on investigations. So next slide. So we are going to proceed with making a recommendation to offset some of those costs or some of those expenses by adding an investigator to our OCR team. And so that job description is already has been completed because we have one investigator. We are waiting, it's this pending board approval actually tonight. And pending their approval to add an additional investigator, we will be posting next week. And again, we don't anticipate this being an extra expense to the budget. In that we're going to be using the idea, the theory, right, is that the monies that we're saving from the millions that we are spending on legal support and the it was 102,000, I believe, as early as February, and now we are in May, and so we know the number has gone up. That will by itself cover the cost of an investigator. So wanted to keep you posted that we are planning to post that position pending board approval. We are still exploring different scenarios of legal support in-house, meaning on-site general counsel, be it full-time or part-time. We want to further explore this with our board, and we will be drafting a job description, and we will be sharing that job description for approval with our board, but that will not likely happen until fall. So I know some folks were ready for that to happen like years ago. We definitely see the need as, again, we look at our legal costs and even our investigation costs, and quite honestly, even our PRA amount. So we anticipate we will be moving in that direction in some way, shape, or form. We wanted to give you that update that that's likely not going to happen into the fall. And hopefully you all will be on SBAC next year, and we can give you that update when it's ready. We are looking at some other districts and how they've written their job descriptions and things that they ask for their in-house general counsel to do to inform our job description. But that's where we are with that particular item. I'm looking, I don't see any questions. Okay, next slide, please. Go one back, please.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, go a couple back. We're gonna go slide 42. There we go. The other topic of interest that, again, does not require a vote, but was something that we engaged with you all quite a bit on was programs. Again, that's that very last section of our budget reduction strategies, which talks about consolidating and reducing positions in programming. You all had particular interest with our programs that supported college readiness or supported our students to get ready for college. Those specifically were Bridge, Pointe Avid, College Bound, Young Gifted and Black, and RISE. Remember that Young Gifted and Black is an exception in that it is the one of this list that is not focused on high school students or even necessarily has a college bound focus. However, it is a part of the African American Success Framework, and it was one of the programs that folks were interested in. You might recall that a couple meetings ago, we shared with you all these program overviews that we developed. The links to those overviews are still here for your access and information. We talked about how that program overview is a new tool that we developed and are using, and that we anticipate improving it just even over the summer and at the beginning of the fall. But our goal is that all of our programs will have program overviews that call for them to speak to metrics, that call for them to speak to various data sets and progress monitoring along the way, as well as information about their goals, their staffing structure, and the cost. Our hope is that as these are done better, we will be able to engage more thoughtfully as a budget advisory team and really make some informed decisions. That said, we do recognize that one of the things that we said that we were going to do as we move towards our budget balancing target is to really evaluate program costs. And so we have been engaged in some robust conversations with many of these partners and wanted to give you an update on those conversations. Next slide, please. The first of which is the African American Success Framework, specifically calling out 3 partners that are listed in the framework, which is R.T. Fisher, College Bound, and Young Gifted and Black. And I apologize because I need to get you all the appropriate organizational, the company that should be named R.T. Fisher. It's actually not R.T. Fisher. And maybe Jill, you can look for it while I'm presenting, but I will circle back with you all. You all know it as R.T. Fisher, but when you look at the contract, you will see a different name listed. So I'll make sure to use that accurate name for you. At any rate, we were able to engage in some conversations. The first set of conversations was with R.T. Fisher, and we were able to look at the overall contract and services that were provided, looking at direct services to students, indirect services, and looking at things where we might be able to find some efficiencies or take on some of the work ourselves. You might, if you are versed in the African American Success Framework, you recognize and you would know that it's a 3-year framework, and these 3 partners are named specifically in the framework. But the idea of the framework for many of the services is really that of a gradual release, is that the idea is that they're going to build our capacity internally to do and hold significant parts of this work. And so that release has already started, and we engaged in a pretty good conversation with R.T. Fisher to think about what can we take on for next year and what can they stop doing. Thank you. It's called Choose College. So if you look at the contract list, you will see Choose College, and that is the contract that I'm speaking of now. And we were able to identify about $70,000 worth of services that we're not going to stop, but we as Berkeley feel that we are, as BUSD, feel that we are better positioned now than we were 2 years ago to take on those things. Some of those things are like communications, like they were creating for our families and for our students a number of communications about the framework and the work that was happening. We also had kits that would go out to our students, our Vision Scholars and our students who were in the Step Up program in the summer and in the winter, actual, hands-on kits that they could engage in some learning and some standards-based activities that they would get during the breaks. So little things like that, we were able to go line by line, if you will, in the contract and in the services and say, like, we think we can take this on, you all can stop that. And so we were excited to engage in that conversation, one of many, and be able to walk away with, a pretty significant reduction in the overall MOU. Similar conversations are going to be happening with College Bound and Young, Gifted, and Black. And so we anticipate a savings of about $100,000 across the 3 partnerships for the 24-25 school year. What's important to consider and to remember as you look at the left side of the screen is that as we hold our core values of resource allocation, is that this is not just about numbers. This is really an equity initiative. The African American Success Framework came to our district after decades, quite honestly, of feedback and data that says that our African American students and families continue to be underserved and continue to not really realize all of their amazing, either through the lens of academic outcome data or as well as the lens of social, emotional, sense of well-being, connectedness, et cetera. So there's a number of data points in addition to the fact that we have the second largest opportunity gap in the nation that says that we need to have a more intentional focus on our African American students. And so that is where and how the framework was birthed, if you will. It was trying to put together a whole bunch of different efforts and programs that the district had been trying and doing across years into one framework. So we're still very much committed to that equity work. And we're still very much committed to thinking about how do we make sure it's work that we could actually sustain by really going through, again, this gradual release model and taking on work as we learn and understand the work and as we are trained in the work and needing less and less others to do the work, though we very much appreciate the ways in which all of these organizations have been true and authentic partners with us and our families. So just wanted to give you that update. Again, we anticipate about $100,000 in savings across these partnerships for 24-25, but I do want to note, I have this problem myself, that the instinct is, we just got 100,000, let's go spend 100,000. And so we're not bringing this to you for a vote because we're not asking you or not even asking ourselves to reallocate that 100 somewhere else just yet. We really just want to, take that cost savings because I think Pauline may have shared earlier, our bottom line is still not where we want it to be. And so wanted to give you that update, and I'm going to pause now to see if there's any questions about this particular framework and the programs that are under it before passing it on to Jill to talk about Bridge. Nicole?
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're muted.
Did I?
We still can't hear you. Oh. I can't hear you.
Now?
Now I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Man, so sorry. I hate when people do that. And then it was me this time. So, okay, badge of dishonor. Anyway, thank you so much for the work on this. I really appreciate, especially digging in and figuring out like what are the pieces that we can do right now ourselves. And that's, I really appreciate that. So when, for example, specifically the RT Fisher program, when that was approved 3 years ago, was a 3-year program. So my understanding is that means that when we're sitting here a year from now, 25-26 budget, there will be no RT Fisher on there.
That was the better way to say that is that we as a district and team in partnership with SBAC will have that conversation. We move into 25-26. And the reason why I say that is because, again, now we have these program overviews, Nicole, and we have a much more robust and comprehensive data collection platform, if you will. And so we're going to be able to engage, I think, in more rigorous conversations about what's working, what's not working, and make some more informed decisions. So I don't want to say like, oh, when we get to 24, I'm sorry, 25, 26, we won't need it anymore. In fact, I doubt that we won't need something that really centers our African-American students anymore. But we will definitely engage in a conversation of how do we meet those needs and what does that look like? If it looks like an extension of a partnership with an organization, choose College Now, College Bound, whatever it looks like, not that, that'll be the conversation that we're going to have. I do think and anticipate, just given my years in education and the fact that the gap continues to exist, that we will definitely still need to be intentional about those students and those families. But what it looks like, I don't know yet. But we will definitely engage you all in a conversation about that. But I don't want to have that misnomer of like, that means that by this year, these people are gone, because that wouldn't be an accurate description of what I think will happen.
Okay. Okay. Well, given, I totally understand. I totally get that and understand and agree. I just, I feel as though, given that what we've found is that the last, if that was the intention of the programs originally, we haven't done the best job of the last 3 years, kind of building our own internal capabilities. And so looking at, 1 year left of that original plan, and we've already seen through the data that it's not necessarily the most efficient way to deliver those services, that I'm hoping that means that we can work extra early in that process to make sure that we're putting in place at the very beginning of this fall, the system and the process, so that we can say, what do we need to do to take this over ourselves, so that we're not sitting in like May next year saying, okay, next year we'll do it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's
total sense.
Yeah,
it makes total sense. And I'll say that as we think about that gradual release and us taking it on ourselves, we're going to have to be really honest and reflective about what we can do, what we have done, and what we're willing to do, right? As you talk about, addressing inequities and equity gaps that exist in our district and that exist in education. The other thing that I will say is, I think what we will do also is do a better job of sharing data with you all, but just sharing data more broadly, not just about this framework or these programs, but about all of our programs. They're not all created equal, in that they're not all direct service, right? And so the impact, right, or the outcome for students sometimes is delayed if you're spending most of your time building capacity of the educators who are in front of them. So we're really thinking about how do we have multiple ways to engage and look at the data to see both implementation and impact. But all your points are very well taken. And I think that, yes, we will be able to engage in a pretty robust conversation with multiple measures and multiple data sets that will lead us to a conclusion that I think we could all be comfortable with. And I definitely receive and hear that feedback around this is going to be year 3. And if we haven't done it in year 1 or 2, I would argue we've done a lot in year 1 or 2, but there's still more to do. And I would say a part of that is not even a reflection of the framework itself or the partners, Nicole, but really just a framework of what we walked into 2 years ago when I started, when we admitted that we didn't have strong infrastructure to replicate or sustain a whole bunch of things, nor do we have a strong data-informed culture. So we've built those things up, and I think we'll be better poised to engage in this conversation next year.
Okay. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm scrolling. So the other program of interest is Bridge, and I am passing it to Jill to share some updates on that.
Hi, everybody. Again, just wanted to acknowledge that in this space in SBAC and also in the PAC recommendations, there was a recommendation to reduce the cost in one area in order to address the waitlist and demand for the Bridge program. We know that Bridge provides a valuable service for our students. And in the context of what Anikia just shared, as we're finding places where we can reduce funds and we're looking ahead to next year with additional reductions, we want to be really careful about where we're applying any additional resources. In the context of Bridge, when we make a commitment to a cohort, it's not a short-term commitment, it's a long-term commitment. As an example, back in COVID times, under the superintendency of Dr. Stevens, we had made a commitment to Bridge to add a 5th cohort. That was for 3 years ago. And so we are currently funding a 5th cohort on some carryover funds. which is not in alignment with the stability and sustainability that we would want to be able to see for such an important program. We do know that Bridge also has a higher ratio of case management. So that could be an area that we could explore. And so we are definitely committed to continuing these conversations to understand that trajectory. I want to also just say that Bridge sits in the context of a number of other programs provided at the high school. And what we're learning is we are digging into the Bridge situation alongside of Puente and Avid, which there are 2 slides about that. There's an interconnectedness between all 3 of these that actually begins in middle school. And so one of the things that we want to do at the beginning of next year so that we can lay that groundwork is work with folks at the middle school and high school to understand the pathways that we have available for these particular student groups. So if they're going to be, as an example, in Avid and Puente, there's a challenge when they enter high school in 9th grade because U9 doesn't allow the capacity for those programs to pick up as a continuation from middle school. They sort of skip a grade. And what we've been noticing is that vacuum for 9th graders is really getting filled by the Bridge and the RISE programs. So we want to better articulate a through line between middle and high schools so that we are being good stewards with a limited amount of funds and also maximizing the number of students who are able to participate in a program. So again, there's 2 more slides on Puente and Avid, and I just want to pull that through line. But before I move to the next slide, want to see if there's any questions about Bridge. And I can't see anything for some reason. And Vicky and then Nicole.
Yeah, hi. Thank you guys for this presentation and looking at these programs. You know, a group of us also sort of started the deep dive and looking at these. And just to reiterate on what Nicole said, I think it's not a question of whether or not these types of programs are necessary. It's who's doing the best job and which is the most cost effective. And so if you look at some of the programs and the number of students they're serving and how expensive those programs are based on their outcomes, and then looking at other programs such as Bridge and their outcomes at a much reduced cost, they're much more cost effective, and they often do serve the same student groups. And so I think the question isn't necessarily taking on the capacity just ourselves if we're honest with ourselves and can't take on that capacity. It might also be looking for who else can do that work at a better cost. You know, I mean, you're gonna, you know, shop around and you're not gonna buy the most expensive flooring. You're gonna, you know, buy the cost effective one if you're in a tight, lean budget year. And then one of the things we discussed is, you know, particularly with the Avid and the Puente program, having a high schooler myself, it is extremely difficult to fit anything into a day. When you have to do your PE credits and you have to do your language credits, and then you want to have an elective, that maybe those programs are something that is just a middle school program. And then students might roll in to like Bridge or RISE, as you were saying, they do in 9th grade, and maybe not try to keep them you know, for 11th and 12th, if we're finding that that's not serving students, and maybe build capacity in the Bridge or RISE to take on some of those same types of things that might be missing. You know, so I just want to make sure that those ideas are out there when we start exploring this further next year.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate what you said, Vicky, and agree with a lot of that. We're also trying to calibrate on that program evaluation. We have some programs that have been, you know, city funded or maybe BSEP funded that have been on cycles over a long period of time for review, et cetera. So they have a stronger muscle around doing that type of work in comparison to some of our newer programs. And as a system, we haven't been able to, you know, we're moving toward being able to support that better. So definitely take those comments into consideration. Nicole?
Before Nicole, I'm sorry, just really quickly, I just wanted to respond to another comment in the chat about speaking to LEAP. We can definitely share something. I don't know if you want to do it on the fly, Jill, because you are that good. That good, but we do not have a slide prepared, Lindsay, to speak to LEAP just because it wasn't on the list. But you are right. There is definitely something that we need to explore and think about how to improve efficiencies. But your call, Jill. I just wanted to call it out in the chat because I'm sure you didn't see it.
No, I appreciate that. I'll just give a broad comment about LEAP, that LEAP is definitely on the list, but there are also some contract components that are attached to that we are trying to better understand. But we're definitely aware that LEAP is another area as we are assessing the landscape of supports for students who need additional help. Nicole and then Matt.
Thank you so much. So first, I really appreciate the concept of, as you said, like trying to figure out those pathways and, how obviously, through the data that we have been able to see, we have at least 2 programs there. I'm sure there's many programs at Berkeley High that are working super well, but we have at least 2 programs that are really doing amazing work with our kids. And so trying to figure out, as Vicky commented, a couple of us we're talking about how do you share those tendrils into middle school too, right? And because we have these programs, and how do you figure out what's working and then extend that through? So thank you for that work. I will say it honestly, it breaks my heart that we know there's like 50 kids on the wait list that want to be in the junior year bridge program. There's a whole cohort that's on the wait list and they want in. And my son's a junior at Berkeley High and is getting just smacked down in his junior year. And he has a badgering mom like me, and there are 50 kids who want to be part of this program, and they're not going to get access to that in the most important year of their high school. And it just makes me sad. But couple that with the concept of I love the deep dive and trying to figure out how to make more of the bridge program and the RISE program. We did this 2 years ago, or we expanded it, which I think was a fantastic decision to do at the time. I'm not sure we're going to find any more juice from this squeeze, if you get what I mean. Like, we're not going to be able to do more with this program with the same resources. If we can, you're a miracle maker. But, so I do think that I don't think that's going to be the goal quite as much as having to figure out what we need to do to fund this program to enable all those kids to have the same access, which I would love to see happen.
Yeah, and Nicole, I would say it's probably a both and, not an either or, right? And so one of the things that's why we put that we probably thought about you when we made the slide, right? Is that we are going to think about and explore if we can leverage the existing staff to serve more students. And it might be that we can't, or it might be that we can do some, but just, wanted to put that out there that sometimes we just look at the numbers and the dollars, et cetera, and there are ways to improve efficiencies, which again, one of our budget reduction strategies that is not about adding to, but just restructuring and rethinking how things are done. But we hear you, and we've heard other families too, and we know the bridge, like a number of these programs, are incredibly impactful for students, and we're always trying to be creative around how do we do it, and that creativity does not always mean adding more sections or more money or even more people, believe it or not. But, we'll again, we're working, and we'll come back to you all. And I know that Matt has a question or comment, so I'm going to stop responding.
Okay. I will just say, of all of the Berkeley High teachers that I've spoken to, when I've, any interaction, they have all held up their hands straight up and said, these 2 programs are phenomenal and they should be expanded. And you guys have a lot more access to those teachers than I do, but it's 100% vote of confidence from those that I've spoken to. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Is it my turn? Okay, I was gonna make 2 comments, but on the things that have been brought up. One is, one of the lenses that I use when I've been looking at all of this data is how much face time do kids have in front of, the people that are helping them, whether they're teachers or others. And that it's been to me in the data that's been made both by the district and by some of the parents in this meeting, just like a stark difference between the amount of just like hour by hour FaceTime you have with educators, and how that translates, for the dollars that you're spending. And I don't want to lose sight of that. There is a difference of seeing, your teacher every day, 4 or 5 days a week, or your RISE tutor, whatever it may be, and having, you know, sessions on the weekends 9 times. And that isn't to say that those aren't worthwhile sections or sessions. I believe our college career counselor or future ones could also do similar things with certain families. But I do think that, you know, we can look at what percent of the kids get into 4-year colleges and all of those things. But I think that from the daily experience of the students and, you know, just having that daily person, right, whether it's RISE or Bridge, does make a huge difference, which is why you hear from the teachers at Berkeley High what works. And the fact that some programs are under enrolled and have been under enrolled, not this year, last year, and the year before, and other programs have wait lists, right? And I think there are reasons for that. The other thing I just wanted to mention was just with LEAP, it is complicated. Changing LEAP has unintended consequences. And so I just think it's important. You can't look at LEAP only as an intervention strategy. You have to really take a deeper dive on how does it change the entire structure of the U9, and that is what makes it even more. It's not just that there's contractual language around it, but it actually impacts the entire structure of the U9 and the ability for the U9 to do what it is intended to do. So I just want to add that will be in the conversation. I guess, you know, next year someone's taking notes, they say. But, you know, it is a complicated situation because it has structural implications. I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Matt, for that additional clarification. Appreciate it. So just on the other 2 related programs, because we do want to be transparent about where we have made some adjustments. So again, Avid is another situation where we need to take into account equity, stability, and sustainability. It has been a stronger program, in terms of enrollment at the middle schools. And again, because we have the structure of U9, there's a break in the trajectory between middle school and high school. So we will be evaluating that program pathway. But we also have a commitment to a set of students in that cohort. So we have decreased the Avid contribution by a 0.2 FTE, and we will continue to examine Avid as a program, again, in this context of program pathways to support these specific student populations. And then just finally, I think that's the last one related, is Puente. Puente is a newer program. We do also need to have some important considerations about Puente. The one thing that's different about Puente versus Avid is that it does count as an A through G course in the high school. It not replaces, but it counts as one of the students' English courses. Again, would be part of this evaluation on the pathway from middle school and high school. And just a recognition relative to the stability and sustainability situation. We have been using our Learning Recovery Block Grant to help support that program. The good news is that the enrollment is getting to be more robust, and so we can fund those classes on the teacher template. It doesn't require additional resources. But we are using the Learning Recovery Block Grant to pay for the counselor and the other activities that go along with that program. So we'll be looking at that in this whole landscape of secondary programs. Vicki.
Another thing I just wanted to add to the notes was I recently enrolled my daughter in dual enrollment at BCC, and some of these programs are actually at the community college level as well. And so I am wondering too if we could continue our partnerships with the community college and talk about that pathway, not just from middle to high school, but high school to community college, and have that be one of the data points when we're looking and evaluating the various programs, which ones are continued in that path. Not necessarily if you go to a 4-year university, but if your path is to go to like Berkeley City College, some of these programs will continue at that time. And so in case people weren't aware of that, I wanted to let them know.
Great. Thank you, Vicki. All right, last slide of the last SBAC meeting. We definitely want to get your feedback. We want to extend appreciations for the hard work and deep thinking that this group has done this year. I feel like at the close of my second year, it was a little bit of whiplash because last year we were trying to figure out how to spend money. And this year we were trying to figure out how to not spend money, which I will say is not as fun as the prior year, but definitely got a lot of important insights from this group. Did also get to see many of you in action as you reported to your various advisory groups. So want to acknowledge all of the note-taking and communication that you have established, because we were really looking at this group as being a lever of communication for the rest of that group. Inika, you just told me you were listening because I know you're starting closed session, but
I'm
now
in 2 meetings, but because I wanted to say thank you, but you already did it. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to echo what Jill said. We actually have a feedback QR code here. I don't think you've introduced that yet, Jill. You hopefully noticed that we heard your feedback, not just at the beginning of last year when we started in this role, but even at the end of last year. You wanted more clarity, you wanted more information to help you make informed recommendations. And you wanted more consistent process. And so we've tried our best to implement those feedbacks into this year's SBAC. And so now we want to hear from you again to see how we've done in that regard. So we have a QR code here. If you can grab your phones or your devices and click there. We are asking that SBAC members only complete the feedback survey. Everyone's feedback matters. We really want to hear from the SBAC folks who've been here consistently. If you can't click the QR code, there is a link where it says 2324 SBAC feedback. There's a link there. But we're going to do the teacher thing. Like, we're not letting, we can't really say we can't let anybody leave. We're going to try to not let anybody leave until you do the survey, because again, we do take your feedback very seriously. It has been a crazy journey, y'all. $7.1 million in budget balancing or budget reductions is one of the largest I've heard that Berkeley has engaged in a very, very long time. And we did it, I think, true to our core values, or trying to be true to our core values, but also really trying to minimize impact, the felt impact to our students and our classrooms and our programs. And we know that we could not at all have done that without y'all. Y'all have some pretty good ideas. You pushed us, you asked questions, and we tried our best to be responsive. And I would say we did it while also doing a whole bunch of other things. I'm not sure if you all knew, but there were definitely other things going on in the district. And you guys kept coming and engaging us in this process. You were both of what we wanted you to be, and that is accountability partners for sure, but probably even more importantly, thought partners. I'm hoping that folks are going to come back next year to do this again, because we still have more work to do towards that $9 million total cut, and consistency does matter. So I just wanted to say thank you. I also want to say don't leave until you click that QR code and fill those things out. Up next is that we are going to be taking the final budget to the board. We are going to also be bringing our LCAP budget and our LCAP to the board, and the governor's enacted budget. We'll have that before June 15th. Next slide, please. I know you all love these meetings from 4 to 5:30 because you love being on the screen with me and Pauline and friends, but there are no more meetings. This is the last one. And when you are home by yourself missing us, you can click on this little video link. You guys might not know, my child is 11 now, but we used to watch Dora the Explorer, and Dora and Boots would always sing this song, We Did It. And so if you want to celebrate you and celebrate the work that can it play? Can it play? Play it. I got to go to closed session. Hurry up, play.
you got to take the volume up. Yep.
Oh, goodness. We need a new DJ. Okay. This is what happens. We can balance 6.9 million, 7 million budget, but we cannot play a video. That's all right. Anyway, I can't hear it. Maybe you guys can hear it. But anyway, we did it, and we did it because of you, and I appreciate you. And the work is not done. Next slide, please. We want to resume SBAC early next year. Next slide, please. Our idea of early is November. And so we're anticipating a November start. We, again, have work to do, and we want to continue to improve on doing this work with you. And so as we move into and think about 24, 25, we want to first ask that you all start talking about what is going to be your representative on, who's going to be your representative on SBAC next year. It could be you. I don't think we have any limitations on how often you can serve in this role. So come on back. But if it's not going to be you, go ahead and find and tap that person as soon as possible. Again, we're going to resume November, December at the latest, but probably November. We want to keep implementing our budget reduction strategies because remember, we do have more balancing that we have to do. We're going to come back with more metrics and more goals so that we can have those robust conversations with more data and information to inform recommendations. And we're going to continue to progress monitor. So those things that we did agree to do this year that we are doing, we're going to be bringing you periodic data updates on how those things are actually working for our students and our families. So wanted to make sure you saw that. And then one more again, next slide, please. We just wanted to say thank you. There's a quote that I've used with our district team and leaders and lots of folks that's by Michael Fullen, and it says, what we need is consistency of purpose, policy, and practice. Structure and strategy are not enough. The solution requires the individual and collective ability to build shared meaning, capacity, and commitment to action. When large numbers of people have a deeply understood sense of what needs to be done and see their part in achieving that purpose, coherence emerges and powerful things happen. Because of you, I think we are better positioned to do some powerful things in BUSD. We thank you again for your partnership. We've had a great time getting to know you all. I'm going back into closed session, and so I want to bid you farewell. Have a wonderful summer. Do not leave until you fill out the survey. Bye.
Vicky?
Bye-bye.
Vicky, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. I apologize for those who've already heard this, but and also I just wanted to thank the staff for being so responsive to all of our requests. I've really enjoyed being on the committee this year. And we've talked about this in other committees, but being that the school year starts 2 weeks earlier than it did pre-pandemic, I know staff is going to be discussing the possibility of starting all of the meetings and committees a little bit earlier potentially. And so I just wanted to put a shout out to a mostly new audience in this meeting as an encouragement to try to do that. I feel like we would definitely benefit from, starting a little bit earlier if we can make that happen versus the mid-October when we do our initial training meeting. And so for those of you who are going to be in those discussions, I just wanted to put a plug for that.
Thanks, Vicky. Okay, well, that's it, guys. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I'm hoping everybody will be here next year, right? Natasha and everybody else. So with that, Jill, you have anything else you need to kind of wrap this up with?
Wrap it up, man.
Wrap it up. Hi, Bo, it's done.
After school. I hope so.
Okay, guys, thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next time. All right. Bye.
Thank you very, very much for all your work this year. Really, sincerely appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.
Doing it. I promise I'm doing my homework. I promise.
Yeah. Oh, you guys already. Yeah. Do your survey.
Teacher thing and put the survey track how many people are turning it in. So yeah, as you know, we do look at feedback and we use it. So appreciate the time you're taking to do that.
Okay. Promise.
Okay, guys.
Okay. See you guys soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.